Hello, Pitt fans. Welcome to another edition of the PG Pitt Show, brought to you by FanDuel. I'm Stephen Thompson. That's Abby Schnabel. We cover Pitt Athletics for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And Abby, when we sat here last week, looking ahead to that Florida State game, we were looking at a Pitt team that was heavy underdogs, facing a ranked team on the road, 10.5-point underdogs going into that game. The narrative has completely flipped after the Panthers took down Florida State in Tallahassee. Now the Panthers are 10-point favorites going into Syracuse this weekend, their fourth ACC game of the year. Yeah, fourth ACC game of the year. We're starting to solidify some narratives about this team. We're starting to figure out a little bit of who they are now, especially after the quarterback change and especially as we hit the midway point of the season. So seems like a lot more optimism around this team right now, and it's been well earned.
Yeah, I'm not even sure maybe anyone outside of the program, maybe even inside of the program, expected Mason Heinschel to have the impact that he has had on this team, because his ability at quarterback has really opened up the offense, which has allowed the defense to really, continue to shore up. I know Pat Narduzzi said he wasn't particularly the happiest about the defensive play against Florida State, but really tough offense. So now that we're seeing a complete Pitt team, there's a lot to be optimistic about, especially heading into a game against Syracuse.
Exactly, absolutely, and obviously a different level of opponent. Even if Florida State is a little bit down, I think Syracuse is even more down than them after a good season last year. But Abby, you mentioned that Pat Narduzzi wasn't particularly pleased with some of the defense that Pitt played down in Tallahassee, and I want to get into that a little bit more because they allowed a quarterback in Thomas Castellanos, not known for his passing ability. In fact, on the television broadcast, they're talking about how the Florida State coaches were intent on limiting him to under 20 passes, right? Like that's what they think is the optimal zone for Thomas Castellanos. And I don't know what his final passing, attempts number was at, but he hit on some really big plays. I think was pretty close to 250 yards passing, threw for a couple of touchdowns. Not exactly what you want, right? Like if a coaching staff is thinking we need to limit how much our quarterback throws the ball, and then he goes out there and throws for 250 yards on you, that's a bit of a problem. And it's not a new problem for this Pitt secondary. We've been talking about them kind of all year, maybe one of the weaker units on the team. But I guess let's talk through solutions. I mean, is this team destined just to not be a very good passing defense, or are there maybe some ways that they can improve in your mind?
I think it's hard because, when you think about probably the biggest error on coverage from last week, you look towards Javon McIntyre on that final Florida State touchdown. And that's a guy who's experienced. He's a veteran, and I'm not sure how much more learning you can do when you're that old. Just harder when you're a little bit more cemented, and he has the starter spot already. And yeah, you could lose the starter spot, but really, who's there to kind of replace him? And so that part of it makes me a little worried. But I will say that these younger guys have really been stepping up. I mean, even Lupin Cruz Brookins into those younger guys. I think of Sean Lee Jr.'s pass breakup from last week, Shadarian Harrison's forced fumble. These younger guys are showing what this secondary should be, maybe slipping up in coverage every now and then, but that's to be expected. And so when you compare it against a veteran player like Javon McIntyre, you can see how these younger guys can get through. It's just unfortunate because I don't know how much changing you can do with the veterans at this point, if that makes sense. So it's a half and half kind of thing, in which I do think there are ways to improve. And I think you're seeing that in how these younger guys are getting more involved on the plays, causing a little bit more chaos. But then you have a slip up like Javon McIntyre did, and it's not his first one. So how do you fix that when we know it's an issue and it hasn't been fixed, even though we've been talking about this since week 1?
Yeah, and I would also point to Tamon Lynham's, inability to go get that football or make a play on the football at the end of the half. The touchdown that Florida State scored, the long one. Yeah, you can talk all day about Kyle Lewis. He may be able to make that sack most of the time, but if he doesn't, that ball hangs up in the air, and Tamon Lynham is right there where it's about to land. Let's go attack that football. And I bring that up for kind of the same reason that you brought up McIntyre, guys who are in their fifth or sixth years, you kind of are who you are at that point, right? And how much coaching is really going to elevate your game, over the final 6 or 7 games of your senior year, right? Like, again, you kind of are who you are at that point. So I'm with you. The young guys have been stepping up, and even if they're not perfect, I am always, all things being equal, I'm going to go with the younger guy, one that maybe has some more potential and some more room to grow, I guess you could say. So I wouldn't be afraid to get some more Sean Lee in there, right? Like to get some more Shadarian Harrison in at cornerback. It's not exactly a young guy, but I thought Kavir Baines was really good last week, and Pitt was a little limited because Cruz Brookins wasn't good to go, game time decision, and didn't end up playing. Fingers crossed you can get him back this week, and that would really change things as well. It does seem like Kavir Baines is earning his way into the secondary rotation a little bit more, and you get Cruz Brookins back. He's been one of the better players on this defense as a whole. Those are two easy solutions right there, but I do kind of agree with you. I feel like going a little bit younger might actually help this Pitt defense get a little bit better. But I don't know if we're really going to find out much about this Pitt secondary this weekend. Syracuse, really tough loss losing Steve Angeli, wrong transfer quarterback wearing orange. Steve Angeli for the year to an injury. So you've got Ricky Collins in there. 2 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, I believe, this season. I don't think he's been particularly impressive. Obviously, he's in a tough spot. What have you kind of seen from the passing offense at Syracuse, going from Kyle McCord, who led the ACC in passing yardage a year ago, to this? I mean, I know the receivers have some talent, but does the quarterback scare you enough to really make a difference?
I mean, I think it's hard because we don't have a lot of Ricky Collins hasn't played a ton. And so with the turnover of having to switch into a new quarterback and a guy who hasn't played a lot of reps, there's a lot of inconsistency there, which doesn't help with the rhythm of the offense. Like without a settled quarterback, you have to lean on tempo. You have to lean on your run game, which doesn't help Syracuse at all going against Pitt's defense, or short passing, or you got to chuck it up and hope that Pitt's, as we said, Pitt's secondary falls short. And I don't know if Ricky Collins has that line or has the ability to really do it. If he does, I mean, he has the receivers. I mean, Jonte Cook the second. I mean, he's the kind of receiver who can flip a game if Pitt's corners give him enough room. But this is a Syracuse offense who's still finding its identity, and to do that against one of, if not the most physical defense in the ACC, maybe below Miami, but it's Pitt's defense is really good, and to not have an established identity mid-season, have to go against them, that doesn't bode well for Ricky Collins or the offense as a whole.
Yeah, not having they call it easy buttons, right? Like easy places for an inexperienced quarterback to go to when they feel pressure, when they feel kind of overwhelmed. Like that's tough, and it doesn't really seem like Syracuse has that. I think they've got some talent in the backfield, like Yasin Willis. Pitt fans will know him well, a one-time Pitt recruit. But seems like he's kind of enjoying a bit of a breakout year, and I would expect him to see a ton of carries in this game. But yeah, it doesn't really seem like they have a lot of that easy stuff, and like you said, an identity to kind of lean on when things get tough. And so, yeah, it's a little bit tough to see. First of all, how that passing offense can really get going. I am almost certain that Pitt will give up a long touchdown pass of more than 25 yards in this game, because that's just kind of what they do. But I'm not sure Syracuse is going to be able to do that consistently enough. And that, Collins will even have the time to uncork balls like that. So we'll see. I want to flip it over to the offensive side of the ball for Pitt. This seems like, to me, a spot where they can really get the run game going. Doesn't seem like Syracuse defends the run very well. I think they're giving up an average of 5 yards a carry this season. What say you? I mean, I know you have a high opinion of that Syracuse defensive front, but is this a spot where Pitt can maybe get the ground game going a little bit?
I think this is absolutely a spot where Pitt can exploit some holes in Syracuse. Their front seven is pretty solid, especially inside, but it lacks a lot of consistency, and it's shown some pretty sustained pressure and cracked under that pressure. Pitt's run game is pretty solid, especially when Desmond Reed's in. We've seen it grow more and more. It hasn't been utilized probably to the full extent it can be, but with Desmond Reed anticipated, Syracuse is going to get fatigued. I mean, Pitt's going to rotate Desmond Reed, Jakarian Turner. We learned how to say his name properly yesterday, and I already forgot.
And he's Jakarian?
Jakarian, thank you. Jakarian Turner, Boosie, and then Joel's Goff. All three of them are going to cause a lot of strain on that Syracuse defensive line, that front seven too. And when you have, I think this offensive line has a little bit more physicality to Syracuse's defensive line, so that's going to wear them down a little bit too. And if Pitt leans on the force on the run and forces Syracuse to really respect that, it opens up that complementary offense that Pat Narduzzi has been harping on. And we know Mason Heinschel can throw. So exploiting the run game is honestly a huge it'd be a really good plan of attack for Pat Narduzzi and his staff, because they haven't shown that they're able to really defend against it. And even if they do somehow start to defend against it, you still have the passing game. And so, the Orange defense has some talent, but the discipline hasn't shown up when it's been tested. And that bodes well for Pitt, who I feel like is a fairly disciplined offense under Mason Heinschel.
Yeah, I think the one thing you do want to be careful of if you're Pitt, your passing offense is really the better the better part of your offense, I guess, putting it very simply. So you don't want to get away from that too much you don't want to run the ball for the sake of running the ball, right? If it's not working, do not lean on it, right? Don't get sucked into this notion of we've got to establish the run when your passing offense has been really efficient and your freshman quarterback really hasn't given you much reason yet to say he's not capable of kind of carrying the load. So that would be my only thing. Like you said, I am with you. I agree this is a chance to maybe get the run game going, establish some confidence there, especially given how well the offensive line played last week. So could be a spot for that, but got to be careful. Can't overemphasize it or can't lean on it at your own expense. All right, Abby, about that time of week again, we're going to get into some game picks. According to our friends at FanDuel, Pitt, 10.5-point favorites. Like we said, flipping the narrative a little bit. They are the big favorites in this game. They're the ones that got to take care of business. I'm saying Pitt wins the game. Are you on the same boat, I would assume?
Yes.
All right. Now that we've talked about that, we're in agreement that Pitt is a big favorite in this game, but do they cover that 10.5-point spread?
I hate how high it is, but I think they do. I just always get nervous when it's a double-digit lead like that. But I feel like last week really showed that this team can score under against a really elite defense. And I'm not sure that Syracuse is elite quite yet. I think it has the capability, but it hasn't been able to really get there yet. And so I'm going to say Pitt's going to cover.
I went back and forth on this. I really don't feel comfortable with it, but I do think if it was my own money on it, I would not feel comfortable with it. But since I'm not putting any money on it, I would say I'm going to go that Pitt covers. I just think they are simply the more talented team, the better team, the team with more continuity. That is also what I said prior to the West Virginia game, but whatever happened there. Yeah, I think Pitt covers. I think this is fairly comfortable. They are not going to look perfect, but I just think Syracuse is in too much of a state of flux for them to really put up much of a fight. All right, let's move to the point spread over under 54.5. Abby, do you think this gets pointsy? Do we see some offense here?
Every time I say the under, they go over. So I feel like I have to take the over. But it's hard because I think Pitt's offense is going to score a lot of points, but I'm not convinced that Syracuse's offense is going to score a lot of points. And I don't necessarily think Pitt is going to handle or cover 54.5 points by themselves. I'm still going to lean the over because I've been wrong every time I've taken the under, and you got to go probability there. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's under simply because I don't necessarily think that Syracuse's offense can keep up.
Yeah, it's so the way I could see this kind of unfolding is I think Pitt can definitely get a defensive touchdown, which is really going to help a lot. They had 3 last year, so why not? especially with new quarterback in there, I think a defense that really is going to be able to pin their ears back. We've just seen this Pitt offense move a lot more methodically in recent weeks. So I think it's going to be really tough just to like get to 40 points, which is, I think, was where Pitt would need to get at for this to have a chance of hitting over. I'm going to go under. I still think that Pitt wins fairly comfortably. I just don't think Syracuse is going to be able to put up enough points for it to really matter. Pitt might score 35, but Syracuse scores more than 10. Like, I'd be pretty surprised, to be quite honest with you. So that's how our game picks go this week. Abby, it's honestly a really loaded weekend in Pitt sports. Not only do we have this game up at the JMA Wireless Dome. Excuse me, I don't want to dead name their stadium. But you're going to be back on the home front, taking care of some volleyball coverage as well as a Pitt basketball scrimmage against Providence. So we're going to get our first look at Panthers hoops. A lot of coverage on post-gazette.com in written form. We're going to have a lot more stuff on this channel, PG Pitt on YouTube. So make sure you're liking this video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. And there will be more to come this weekend, obviously, as we run through the gauntlet and we get into some real busy time of year, the real busy part of the schedule on the college sports calendar. So make sure that you are tuned in. For Abby and me, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.